actionfigureresource.com. Yesterday's toys, today's treasures.
Hi and welcome to the AFR video channel. Today I'm going to be taking a look at some of the rarest Hot Toy figures ever produced. But before I begin, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell icon to make sure you get notification of all my videos produced in the future. Hot Toys are one of the most popular and best known manufacturers of high-end collectible action figures. They were established in 2000 and the company initially focused on producing 1 in 6 scale US military special forces action figures before they transitioned into producing high-end figures based on media properties, primarily under their Movie Masterpiece series brand. Hot Toys' team of artists is led by sculptor Yu Li and painter J.C. Hong. In 2010, Hot Toys' one and only store, Toy Hunters, was recognized as one of the 50 best independent shops in Hong Kong by Time Out magazine. Since their inception in 2000, Hot Toys have become hugely popular and their figures often sell out on pre-order, which leads to their prices being inflated and generally above retail value once they are officially released on secondary markets such as eBay. Before I get into looking at the rarest Hot Toy figures, I want to first take a look at what a rare figure actually is, because different people have different ideas on what constitutes a rare figure. Some people may consider the most expensive figure in the line being the rarest, or the least produced. There are 3 main factors that affect a figure's collectability, rarity, and value. These factors are a figure's supply, which means the number of figures actually produced. The second factor is the demand, the number of people who actually want to purchase the figure. And the third factor, an often forgotten factor, is a figure's accessibility. Now, by accessibility, I mean how easy it is to actually buy the figure. For example, it's no good having 20,000. The third factor is accessibility. What I mean by accessibility is how easy it is to actually buy the figure. For example, there's no point having 20,000 figures produced if you only have one shop that's selling it. So the more places a figure is available to buy, the more accessible it is. The less places where it's available to buy, the least accessible it is. This often means that if a figure is more easily accessible, the price will often be lower than a figure that is a lot less accessible to find. Now, to take a look at the first two, supply and demand, if we have a high demand and a low supply, this usually gives a figure a high value, whereas a high demand and high supply, or oversupply, will give a figure a low value. Also, low demand and high supply will give a low value on the figure, but a low demand and low supply will often mean that the price stays fairly stable. For a more in-depth discussion on what drives a figure's collectability, rarity and value, please check out my other videos on this particular topic. Now, I don't usually like to quote prices and values because they are so volatile and can change dramatically from day to day, week to week and month to month. So please check out my how to grade an action figure and how to value an action figure videos in order to be able to grade and value your collections accurately. Now, buying one of these Hot Toy figures costs a serious amount of money. Therefore, if you're considering buying one for the first time, make sure you check out my guide on how to buy Hot Toys action figures. This will give you information on what you should buy or shouldn't buy, what the pros and cons are, and how to choose the particular figure that you should buy for yourself. Okay, so with that all said and done, let's move on and take a look at the rarest Hot Toys action figures ever produced. Before I begin, these are in no particular order, and again I'd like to emphasize that the prices quoted are those on eBay at the time of doing this video and are for information only. Okay, the first one we're going to take a look at is the famous type Mission Impossible 2 Ethan Hunt figure, first produced in 1999. Now, many of you may not be aware of this, but before Hot Toys started selling licensed and branded toys, they released 3 figures that were unbranded and unlicensed. These figures were a George Lucas, Keanu Reeves' Neo, and Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt. These 3 figures were produced between 1999 and 2000, with only about 500 of each being produced. These figures are now available in both in branded and unbranded packaging. However, the most popular and hardest of these to find is probably the Ethan Hunt figure. The original unbranded and unlicensed figures were produced under the line of Famous Type, but the Ethan Hunt was the first of the figures that was officially released and licensed as a Hot Toys action figure. That makes this one particularly highly sought after and collectible. In fact, as a result, I have found it extremely difficult to find a true value for this figure, and the last one I can see that was sold on eBay was back in 2015. So if you do happen to see this figure going, then I would suggest you pick it up, especially if it's at a good price. Now, the obvious question is, what is a reasonable price? Well, a reasonable price is the value that you put on the figure. What I would suggest you're doing is having a search on eBay and other auction sites and see if you can find any early examples that have been sold recently, and take that price as your guide on what to pay for any you find. This is generally what I do when I'm looking at buying any particular figure, especially particularly rare or valuable figures. Okay, moving on, the second figure we're going to look at today is the Hot Toys joint promotional Mark 6 Iron Man figure produced in 2012. But don't confuse this with the Mark 6 Iron Man movie promo edition figure. Hot Toys created 2 variations for this particular figure. There was the Mark 6 Iron Man movie promo edition, which generally sells for around the $500 mark and was limited to 3,000 pieces. However, Hot Toys also created a joint promotional edition Mark 6 Iron Man figure that was produced in collaboration with 7UP Hong Kong and was limited to only 16 pieces. That's right, 16 pieces, making it virtually impossible to find. The best example I could find of this figure was selling on eBay for around the $20,000 mark, and this figure is considered to be one of the hardest and rarest of all the Hot Toys action figures. The third action figure we're looking at today was also produced with 2 different variations, but they both go for approximately the same price, and that's the Godfather Vito Corleone figure, originally released in 2009. A second variation of the figure was re-released in 2011 for the Japanese Tsunami Disaster Fund in 2011. Due to the charitable nature of this figure, the later one has become as difficult, if not more sought after, than the original, and both retained an excellent value on the secondary market. The most recent one I could find sold mint in a box for $10,000 US. However, that said, I also found one that sold loose for $500. So there's a huge variation in the price. So be careful if you're looking to buy one of these. Shop around and make sure you look for the best value you can get. Okay, next is the Billie Jean Michael Jackson figure, released in 2009. Now, although this wasn't the first Michael Jackson figure produced, it was the one that was released nearest to the time of his death, and was therefore snapped up extremely quickly by collectors and fans. This has meant there's been a sharp increase in the value of the figure, and most recently it has been selling for anywhere from $800 to $1,000. However, while researching this particular figure, I noticed that the bad Michael Jackson figure has also been steadily increasing in value, but is still reasonably readily available on such places as eBay, selling for between $500 to $800. Therefore, it is my opinion that this is a very good buy. I actually prefer this figure to the Billie Jean one also, and I am confident that the bad figure will continue to increase in value and will eventually surpass the price of the Billie Jean one. Okay, the next figure was the first officially licensed Hot Toys figure, and was the F-14 Combat Tomcat Pilot version 1, released in 2003. Now, this figure of a fighter pilot has a very uncanny resemblance to Maverick from Top Gun, and it is this figure that put Hot Toys founder Howard Chang and the Hot Toys company on the map. This figure was limited to only 5,000 pieces, and if you're lucky you'll see one pop up every now and again on eBay, but because they were the first officially licensed Hot Toys figure, they are very sought after by collectors and are highly collectible. That said, I recently saw one selling on eBay for only $200, which for me seems to be an extremely good price. So again, as with many of the other figures, be careful and shop around before you buy, and check out the previous prices one sold for. At $200, I would suggest this is an excellent buy and well worth purchasing. Okay, the next figure on my list is the Iron Man Mark III Gunmetal Cellythings figure, released in 2009. Now, this figure was originally a Comic-Con exclusive, which is still highly sought after and collectible today. But Hot Toys also made a second version of the figure, the Silly Things variant. Silly Things is a clothing and popular culture company based out of Hong Kong, and they collaborated with Hot Toys to release a limited amount of the gunmetal variants, with much less of these being produced than its Comic-Con counterpart. Now, although I've been unable to find official numbers, I believe this particular figure was limited to only 200. And the last one I saw sold on eBay went for between the $2,000 to $3,000 US mark. The last figure I'm looking at today is the 8th Ani-Com exclusive Scar Predator model kit, released in 2006. This Hot Toys MMS-18 figure is a Scar Predator from the Alien vs Predator movie and was released at the 8th Anime Convention in Hong Kong. Only 200 pieces of this particular figure were available at the convention, and they sell on the secondary market for anywhere between $500 to $1,500. But due to its extreme rarity and popularity amongst fans and collectors, this to me seems to be a very good price, and I am pretty confident that these will continue to increase in value over the coming years, particularly with the reboot of the Predator franchise recently. Okay, before I wrap up for today, I think it's worth mentioning that the 1/6 scale collecting is becoming increasingly popular amongst adult collectors. As a result, the rarer pieces are continuing to increase in value and are likely to do so for the foreseeable future. Also, it's worth bearing in mind when Hot Toys first started producing figures way back in 1999, they were a small, little-known company who have become one of the biggest, most popular and most highly sought-after manufacturers of 1/6 scale action figures on the market these days. Therefore, their early figures are becoming increasingly popular and valuable to collectors. The main thing to remember when looking at buying a figure, particularly on the secondary market, is to wait for the price to come to the value you're willing to pay for it. As with all things collectible, the prices can be quite volatile and will vary quite dramatically day to day, week to week, month to month. So set your price and then wait for that price to come to you instead of chasing after price. Also remember, any figure is only worth as much as you're willing to pay for it. If it has sentimental value and personal value, then obviously it might have a greater value to you than someone else. So it's always worth deciding beforehand how much you're willing to pay for a particular figure, then stick to that price. If you feel there's any figures that I've missed on this list or should be included, please put it in the comments below. Don't forget, hit the subscribe and the bell icon to make sure you're notified of all my newest and latest videos. Okay, that's it for today. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you all again soon. Bye for now.
ActionFigureResource.com. Yesterday's toys, today's treasures.